Hi, this is Chris from Winterfylleth, and you're listening to The Dan Chan Show on Hard Rock Hell Radio.
Hey Chris, how's it going?
Good, thank you. Nice to be on the show.
Great, mate. So you guys released The Reckoning Dawn last May. How is it releasing in the first wave of the pandemic, and how has it been received?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and one that I was asked a little bit, actually. It's a strange thing to be an artist in the middle of all this, as I'm sure you've probably heard from lots of other people. But our intention, really, with the album was to kind of continue just to put it out. You know, I think we released it, was the 8th of May, I think, roughly, was when we put it out. Yeah, obviously we'd gone into the lockdown middle of March in the UK, so I think everything was still kind of fresh and new then, really. You know, people didn't really know what was happening. You know, government hadn't really got their head around it yet, and I don't know if the music industry had. You know, a few people had done streams and things like that. Enslaved was a notable one that kind of stuck out to me, but we were thinking, we're all stuck at home. You know, we're not supposed to go anywhere. Everyone was kind of really worried about venturing outside, and you know, didn't really understand what was going on with it and what it was going to lead to.
Yeah.
So we just thought, look, we'll put the album out, you know. Even though we can't go and tour it as we'd intended to, it's still a point of interest for people. It's still, I guess, a little bit of hope when you've been stuck at home for whatever it was, 8 weeks or 9 weeks by that stage. And we just thought, you know, the record had already been made and it was sort of sat in the warehouse. So we thought we'd just do it. And I think that was probably the right decision. I know lots of our fellow artists kind of sat on their albums and sort of put them out later in the year in the hope that, you know, it would be 12 weeks and it'd be over, and you know, we'd be back to touring by the kind of autumn. But actually it didn't turn out that way, did it? So I think in the end it was really, really good. And
obviously more people have got time at home to listen to the record as well, haven't they?
Well, yeah, that's good. I was going to say, that's going to be my next point. Yeah, absolutely. I think people probably had more time to spend with it. I know it's probably our biggest selling album to date, definitely. And I think that all those things probably kind of combined to help. You know, people had more time. Also, people were just looking for things to do. Like, obviously, people were buying lots of stuff online and sat around thinking, what can I buy? And what's new this week? So, you know, maybe for the first time in a long time, it gave people the opportunity to actually get into the records they buy. Because I think a lot of people buy stuff, but I don't know if people ever truly listen to things anymore.
I agree with that. And I suppose the album feels old now, you know, not only being written well before you released it, but by the time you tour it, it's going to feel strange. How do you think you're going to overcome that?
I think we just have to treat it as being new. And I think that, well, I hope that everyone is of that same mentality. You know, it's been through no fault of anybody's, really. No. That we've sort of been put on pause. Yeah. So I'm hoping that as and when we can get out, you know, if not this May tour that we've got booked, then maybe after summer we've got some stuff booked to the back end of this year. I'm hoping we can go out and do it. And you know, and I think we sort of considered that as a band and thought, do we kind of keep writing and try and do something in this time? Or do we just sort of work on the premise that, no, you know, this has been a big album for us and we want to be able to go out there and do it justice before we then start sticking other things out? And I think that our view is just, look, we have to treat it as being our brand new album. You know, everyone's been sat at home, everyone will be desperate to get out and go to shows, and I just think that what will be in it, and it is our new record, and that's what it is. We've been on pause for a year, we've not even seen each other, never mind anything else.
Exactly. So when it comes to writing, how do you approach the writing of black metal record? You know, your tracks have a chunky length, and is that problematic when you play live, especially when you get a shorter festival slot?
A little bit. I think you kind of have to think sensibly about it, and obviously festivals are amazing, kind of life-affirming things to play when you play the big stages and people hear your music and you get to, you know, hear people sing it back. I mean, my attitude, and I don't know whether other artists share it, is that festivals are kind of the preserve of you sort of playing the hits a bit. I don't think you should go out to a festival and play, you know, 6 tracks off your new album and then your biggest hit or something. I think people want to go to a festival and have a great time, and people who probably never heard your band before are in just as equal a supply as people that have. And I think that you want to hit them with the big songs. And so for me, you know, that kind of thing, I'd want to play the big stuff. But then for the you know, the Winterfylleth specific shows or the big support slots and things like that, then I'd want to do, you know, more of the album stuff and more of the interest stuff that people will be, you know, who are big fans of the band will want to hear. So, I mean, song length can be problematic, but I think that's just one of those things you have to have a good agent to flesh out, you know. And obviously that comes down to a little bit of politics sometimes, like stage placements and set lengths and all this sort of stuff. And you just have to explain to people, look, you know, we've come a long way. Our songs are this long, like, you know, we need like
I remember seeing Satyricon at a download. I think it was 2007. It was I think they were on at like 11:20 in the morning. And I think they played like 20 minutes. They played like 2 tracks and they were off. I was like, what? It was surreal. You know what I mean? So your previous album, The Hallowing of Airdom, was entirely acoustic. Was it very different to produce an album like that? And was it a relief to get back to normal on the Reckoning Dawn?
I don't know if it was a relief necessarily. And yeah, it definitely was a kind of a step away for us. I think you have to kind of put yourself in the mindset of an artist who's, by the time we'd done the last album, that was our 6th album. So, we've been putting out a kind of full-length black metal album more or less every 2 years or so.
Yeah.
So that, and I think that, because we play a kind of, even though it's not folk black metal, I think there are elements of folk influence in the music and the progression, and obviously some of the lyrical themes are about
I think it comes with black metal anyway, doesn't it? Having a folky element, it has to.
I think so.
Very earthy.
And so, yeah, I agree. And we've always done acoustic tracks on the album. So I think for us, we just wanted to prove to ourselves that we could do an album that we believe was sincere and credible and cinematic and emotional in another genre. And even though it makes sense for black metal bands to do that, it's been done before. Obviously, Ulver did Kveldsanger and October Falls did Maris and Drudge did Songs of Grief and Solitude, things like that. Yeah. It's just something that I think we want to prove to ourselves that we could do, and to show people another side to our writing that's not just, I guess, like 7.5 minute, emotional songs about British history and landscapes and nature and things.
So going back to a young Chris, going back a few years, how did you get into black metal? I mean, I don't know your age, but I certainly remember the infamous Count Grishnak Kerrang front cover and reading the expose on the church buildings, etc. when I was at school and being totally intrigued by it all. How did you get into it?
Yeah, not like that, I must say. So I'm 39.
That means a couple of years younger than me.
So I grew up in a town called Huddersfield in the north of England. And Huddersfield, when I was growing up, was quite a punk rock and ska town, really. Lots of stuff like that was going on at the places that we were going to. So I had a teenage hood, if that makes sense, of listening to kind of punk and ska and Epitaph Records and Refused and No Effects and all that kind of stuff. And it probably wasn't until I was about 15 or 16 when I got to the end of high school or to college where I really sort of started to get into metal. And I think probably as with everybody, they've got sort of similar kind of gateway bands, bands like Pantera and all that sort of stuff, and Metallica probably. And then I was never really satisfied with that stuff, I must say, although I still love some of those albums, I was always one for what else is there. I want something more extreme and heavier and darker and weirder. And obviously that then takes you down routes like, doom metal and finding stuff like Esoteric or Evoking, or it takes you down black metal and finding stuff for me like Drudge and Hate Forest and obviously all the classic stuff like Burzum and Mayhem and Slave and things. And so I guess it was... it probably wasn't until I was about sort of 16 or 17 that I really started to get deep into that stuff, and probably into my kind of early 20s before I was ever really kind of really, really deep in it to have enough money to kind of explore it properly. So I don't know, I guess that's how I did it. And then, like for me, like magazines and all that sort of stuff came a lot later. I was very much more about kind of going into the sort of record shop, which was called Badlands in Huddersfield, where I grew up, and speaking to the guys there and picking stuff up, and like the old school way of like buying stuff by look at the record cover.
Right. Same.
I remember seeing like the kind of the Burzum like Theodore Kittelson artwork, or like or some of the Mayhem, Demisterius Dom Satanas, and some of those kind of things. Just thinking, what on earth is this? And it being almost kind of scary and otherworldly. And funnily enough, I remember kind of going to high school and there almost being this fear around bands like Cradle of Filth. Oh my God, you'll get killed if you go into Cradle of Filth show and all this sort of stuff. And now, it just makes me laugh because obviously it's kind of sort of, I don't know, it's a cosplay gothic Victoriana almost, because, isn't it? And actually there's nothing like that.
At least you're sticking to your true self, because obviously if you'd have gone down the standard thrash rock band, you can rely on gigs at the Dog and Duck, can't you? But with the more black metal, you're kind of limiting your audience.
Maybe, yeah, but I think there is an audience for this stuff, and you just have to tune in with it. There is.
So what's your impression of the black metal scene in the UK?
Well, if I think about it when Winterfylleth started, which was around 2006, when we were first started getting together and making demos, I think that it's night and day. There's that guy, Dial Patterson, who I don't know if you know, that does a lot of writing about black metal, and he's sort of kind of become a little bit of a historian for it almost in many ways, and has that Cult Never Dies Productions book and CD kind of imprint. And you know, he started this page, I think, that was on Facebook. There's something along the lines of black metal from the UK and over the years or something, or whatever it's called, past, present, and future or something. And you know, when I look on there was a link on one of the things that was talking about all the bands that there now are. And when Winterfylleth started, you could list a number of black metal bands from the UK probably on one hand. And even then, it wasn't all kind of exactly black metal. You know, you had things like Create the Filth, obviously, and like Balsa Goth and Hikati Enthroned. And you know, you get much after that, and there wasn't really anything. You know, and I guess that now when I look at it, there's 300-400 bands or something on that list, and probably more that still are not out there and, you know, doing stuff and demoing records and things. So I think it's just become a wholly different thing, and I think that it took for bands like ours and Woden's and Forest of Stars and Fen and people like that to kind of get out there and actually sort of take it into Europe and playing festivals and all around the place, for it to actually make it have some credibility.
Yeah,
it's funny when you think about the history, you know, you think about bands like Venom and, you know, coming up with a term and it sort of being vaguely a kind of, you know, UK-based invention, and then it going to Scandinavia and being done better in the second wave, and then all of a sudden, you know, the UK isn't the place that you expect black metal to come from, and I think we had to kind of overcome that. And now that we have, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bands in our wake, which I'm really kind of, I guess, proud of in a way, because although I can't account for any of their creativity or anything, I think that it helped for us to be able to open some of those doors and be the first through them in many ways.
So with the Scandinavians, they tend to write about Norse mythology and the vast, cold, sparse uplands. You know, where do you guys draw your inspiration? The Lake District, Derby Dales, English history?
Well, I mean, lots of things really. Some of the stuff that we've used for Winterfylleth has been kind of older, sort of Anglo-Saxon history and poetry and folklore. And obviously you referenced our acoustic album, which was the previous album, and that touched a lot more on the kind of actual folk story. So rather than the metal albums, which tend to sort of look at ancient writings and kind of the context they were set in and try and bring it into the modern world and talk about, you know, the social politics of now and the impact of a knowledge of history on people now, you know, understanding where you are, so understanding where you came from so you can kind of see where you are. I think we've kind of dodged between that sort of thing and just the straight up telling of some of those folk stories as well. So, you know, it's a funny thing because there comes this sort of mystique and mystery and kind of intrigue with Norse mythology, and obviously people are really kind of enchanted by the runes and the kind of, you know, the characters and the sort of otherness of it all. And I guess that most people don't really realise that there is a similar kind of offshoot sort of you know, runic history and folk history that comes from the UK that's probably as dark and as interesting. I think not many people have shone a light on it before. And so we always thought that was a really interesting take. And we obviously just wanted our band to be about where we're from and not try and pretend we're Vikings or something or whatever it might be. Yeah.
So you guys are meant to be touring with friends of the show, Milk. How did that come about? And it's going to be tight to see if that goes ahead, right?
I mean, as optimistic as I want to be, I'm fairly sure that the tour will again be cancelled.
Yeah, it was due to be the same time last year, wasn't it? May, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. It's an interesting one around Milk. You know, obviously we're big fans of the band, and
Thomas,
and we were just Thomas absolutely is a character, and we were just thinking, who would be a great touring partner to kind of go out with, you know, a band of a similar level to us, I think, and one who've got a pull of a sort of slightly different audience. And I think, you know, when you're putting touring lineups together, it's not always as simple as like, oh, wouldn't it be great if these two bands toured together? Sometimes you've got to think around, well, what have they got to promote, and have they got a record out, and will people want to see them, and all that sort of stuff. And
of course,
you know, does it kind of diversify your audience? Because I think a lot of the time, if you objectively listen to our bands, they're a much more orthodox, kind of traditional Norwegian black metal band. And I think that, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We love that stuff. But then I think we're much more kind of, I don't know, atmospheric in different ways, and kind of a bit more melodic and less kind of traditional in some ways. So I think that you have people that like both of those kind of things that might not necessarily always kind of come to one show or the other, you know. And so I think if you put bands like that together who are broadly in the same sphere, it can kind of introduce people to new things. And obviously you're talking about your show and introducing people to new music. I think that there's some responsibility on artists to kind of try and bring other artists along as well. And, and while I even though Mork was sort of supposed to support the tour, you know, I really didn't see it like that. It was much more about two kind of similar bands kind of coming out to Europe and promoting their stuff and
It's a great lineup.
Bringing people along.
It's a great lineup. I hope to get to see it one day this year.
Yeah, me as well.
I bet.
I just think that all this kind of, getting down to the kind of the pandemic of it all, I just think that even though the UK seems to be on the front foot in terms of the rest of Europe getting people vaccinated and stuff, I just don't think that enough people will have been done, maybe in this country, but not in the 7 or 8 different European countries that it's going to. And that's half the problem, If you've got a 14-day tour or whatever it is, and you've got, there might be some shows that can go ahead because of some countries being in a better place than others, but I just feel like until the continent is vaccinated or whatever, then
that's right.
Regardless of our intentions, or
the world can open up a bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, being a British band, and obviously with Brexit, are there any complications with regards to playing in continental Europe?
In truth, I don't know. You all you've seen really so far is speculation, because none of our contemporaries or agents or anyone or labels, have had any bands that have gone through with it yet. Then we don't know. I mean, obviously people voted for that for lots of different reasons, and I think nobody has got what they wanted out of it, either side of the debate. And I think that the government, particularly around musicians and the live music industry and everything that entails, has done a huge disservice to that massive population of people. Exactly. And I worry about my friends and my close friends in bands, and the crew that we take on tour with us and all that sort of stuff, because regardless of the sort of Brexit stuff, they've been poor about it. But then even when you think about the Brexit stuff, I don't think it's going to affect a band like us, who probably don't play 90 shows in Europe a year to warrant having a visa for longer than staying for 3 months. Yeah. Whereas I don't know. I'm sure they can probably manage on what they've already earned. But you think about an Iron Maiden or something, who are going to do 4, 5, 6 month tours or whatever it might be. Then maybe it's getting to the point where it causes lots more logistical challenges for them, and 70 crew and vans and carnets and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And obviously we'll get around it, and it might mean that agents have to employ people to sort of do the paperwork, and it's a bit more hassle, and you have to build in longer lead times, or whatever. But
one less beer on the rider,
or whatever it might be, But there's regardless of the politics of it all, there's still a passion and a love for the continent from us specifically. Yeah. And some of our best audiences are in Germany and the Netherlands and Belgium and places like that. So we would not want to be kind of missing out on seeing those fans again and bringing the music to them. And while I'm sure we might be sort of stuck on the British Isles for a while doing that, there's no lesser desire now that we've kind of politically parted ways. I don't think that should mean that we kind of emotionally part ways with those people. Of course.
In 2015, you received the Metal Hammer Golden Gods Award for Best Underground Band. Did it mean something to be recognised?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's still on my kind of mantle at home, and obviously it's nice.
Oh, you don't share it then? Someone have it at weekends or something?
No, indeed, yeah. Unfortunately, you don't get given 5.
No, of course.
Given 1, so you don't all get one. But yeah, it was great, and as kind of maligned as media is sometimes, I think that it is nice to be recognised, and it was unexpected, because when you're at an event with bands that are leagues bigger than you, and like when the time we played, there was like Brian May was there receiving an award, cool. And that scientist guy whose name that escapes me, that were kind of into napalm death, that landed that satellite on the comet or whatever it was, who was it? Do you remember that guy?
Yeah, who was that? I'm just racking my brains now.
I can't remember what his name was, but that guy was there, and there was some like really huge artists there. And obviously we were winning an underground award, but we were stood kind of queuing up to go on to kind of receive our award. And it was presented by like Danny Filth, and then cool. Scott Ian from Anthrax was there just before. Awesome. And so when you're kind of in and amongst those kind of levels of bands receiving an award, of course it's brilliant. And those are bands that you heard coming up, and that you kind of hope to
aspire to
be peers with at some stage. So yeah, it was brilliant, and I was glad of the recognition, because as I remember, there was some great competition in that category, and I don't know, it's just nice to kind of be recognised after so many years for making a contribution.
Absolutely. So a few candid questions now. As a music fan, what's the best show you've attended as a fan?
I don't know, to be honest. Well, lots of them for different reasons, I think. I'm not sure there can ever be just one, because
just give me one.
Well, I tell you what, and this is no lie for kind of online coolness or whatever, but like my first ever show was seeing Motorhead at Manchester Academy, and I think that will go down as one of the most memorable things of my entire life.
Loud.
I was probably about 15 or 16, maybe when my parents would let me go on my own. And
that's cool.
I used to work in a shop on a Saturday, and I think it was a Friday night, the show.
Yeah,
and me and my friend Mike went, and I think it was probably the first time our parents had ever let us out on our own and picked us up and dropped us off, kind of thing. But we went to see Motorhead at Manchester Academy, and it was with this band called Group Dog Drill Supporting, who I think we kind of went to as well. And I just remember genuinely having about 10% hearing for 3 days. We were right at the front. It was the first time I'd ever crowd surfed, and I was just full of that kind of youthful enthusiasm for it. And
love it.
I just remember being sat in the shop the next day, kind of coming down from it, absolutely unable to hear customers who were kind of like coming in, and like, I even remember kind of the Monday maybe going back to college and getting a lift from one of my relatives, and just like still being sat in the car with just this kind of
that's
in
it.
my ears kind of thing.
Constantly.
But yeah, that was really memorable.
So finally, what's your proudest musical moment to date?
I think for me, one of the proudest, and maybe one that really sticks out, was in 2017 when we got to play the kind of main stage of Bloodstock Festival.
Yeah.
Although there's kind of bigger festivals in the world and arguably kind of maybe more important for a band's profile and things like that, to us who were fans of that kind of music and who'd kind of grown up and come up going to festivals like that. I think we played it the first time in like 2009 or 10, and we've been going since probably 2006 or 7. It was just one of those things, we sort of started small, and they were a festival who always supported the band and always gave us a platform, and I think were really instrumental in kind of making us grow from our second album onwards, and actually to kind of sort of come full circle a bit and to be on a good slot on the main stage and playing to that fan base who've helped raise us to where we are. Cool. That was a really special moment. And, there being family in the crowd and familiar faces, but also this kind of sea of UK metal fans who kind of come to see us and regardless of our style of music, seem to know our songs and we're really passionate about it. And it stuck out as a huge kind of goosebump raising moment for me, because it was just a kind of wow moment. From playing small shows and spray painting your first CDRs, outside the back of your house to playing the main stage of a festival you've been going to since you were in your early 20s, I think is a really powerful thing. And proof that you can do it, under your own steam and just kind of
tenacity.
Take an idea and get it that far.
Well, Chris, thanks for joining me on the show, and let's hope we get to see you on the road in 2021.
Yes, I hope so too. Thanks for having me.